Hey there, survivors. Thanks for tuning in to this story. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. It really helps me keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now let's get started. I've never considered myself especially brave. I'm just a maintenance worker who took on an off-season job at a secluded lakeside resort to pay off student loans. When the world changed, I was a few hours into my late shift, double-checking that the pool's heater was working properly and making sure no pipes were about to freeze. If I had known that night would unravel into something far more unnerving, I might have called in sick. But hindsight is always clear, isn't it? Let me start from the beginning, so you understand how I ended up here, barricaded in a utility room with only a single flashlight and no idea what tomorrow holds. The Stillwater Resort isn't exactly famous, but it's tucked away in a gorgeous, tree-lined region beside a small lake. It's the kind of place where families come to fish in the summer, kayak in the fall, and cozy up in the lodge over hot cocoa in the winter. But by late November, bookings are scarce, so the management typically runs with a skeleton crew. That's where I come in. I was hired to handle basic upkeep during these quiet months, check the heating systems, ensure the pipes don't burst, keep an eye on the security cameras, and call in a contractor if something serious breaks. The manager, Miss Gardner, is a tough yet polite woman who oversees operations year-round. She rarely stays at the resort past sundown during the off-season. There just isn't enough going on. She showed me around my first day, handed me keys to various locked areas, and gave me a walkie-talkie for emergencies. I remember her saying, "You'll be fine. Even if the power goes out, we have backup generators. This place practically runs itself." Famous last words, as they say. For the most part, Miss Gardner was right. The resort was deserted, aside from a couple of last-minute guests who'd arrived earlier that evening. A man with a bandaged arm who kept to himself, and a mother with 2 teenagers who looked bored out of their minds. Apart from them, it was me and 3 other people on staff. Jorge, the security guard who took the same shift as me. Amelia, an overworked receptionist who was studying part-time and covered check-ins. Lucy, a part-time cook who handled breakfast and sometimes dinner service if guests requested it. We all expected an uneventful night. Little did we know just how wrong we were. It was around 9 p.m. when I finished checking the pool heater and started making my way back through the resort's long carpeted corridors. The overhead lights buzzed faintly, and the place was so quiet I could practically hear my own breathing. I reached the main lobby to see Amelia behind the front desk, absent-mindedly flipping through a magazine. Out of nowhere, every television in the lobby blinked, cutting from their usual travel commercials to a stark emergency message. The volume rose to an alarming level. Emergency alert. Zombie outbreak. Public safety at risk. Stay indoors. Remain calm. A pre-recorded warning scrolled in large letters across the screen. My first thought was that it had to be a test or a glitch. These emergency broadcast checks pop up sometimes without warning. But the tone of the broadcast was entirely different. Like whoever had programmed it was truly afraid. It repeated every 15 seconds, the same rotating text and the same tense background tone. Amelia looked at me, confusion in her eyes. "Did Miss Gardner mention any sort of drill?" she asked, her voice low. "Not a word," I replied. "Could be a freak system error." We both watched the screen, waiting for more details, but they never came. The message was static, giving no location or instructions beyond, "Stay indoors, remain calm." Another minute passed. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the broadcast cut back to the usual looping footage advertising resort amenities. "That was weird," Amelia said, biting her lip. "I'll call Miss Gardner. Maybe she knows something." I nodded and went behind the front desk with her. She picked up her phone and tried the direct line, but only static answered. We had no idea how quickly our sense of normalcy would evaporate. As Amelia continued trying to call Miss Gardner, I decided to head over to the security room, where Jorge kept watch over the closed-circuit television, CCTV monitors. I opened the door to find him standing in front of the screens, arms crossed. A strange glow lit his face. "You saw that broadcast, right?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "And look at this." He gestured to one of the screens. The resort's main gate, located about half a mile from the lobby, was visible via a camera mounted on a tall pole. The gate was closed, as usual, but something was off. A figure stood on the other side, barely illuminated by the overhead lamp. They seemed to be swaying, as if struggling to remain upright. "Must be a late arrival or something," I remarked, squinting at the grainy footage. "Do they look hurt?" Jorge zoomed in. The figure's posture was unnatural, leaning forward at the waist, shoulders slumped. "I can't make out their face," Jorge muttered. "But they haven't rung the buzzer or anything." We watched for another minute, expecting them to approach the intercom. They didn't move. Instead, they swayed in place like they were in a trance. Occasionally, they seemed to twitch. My initial thought was maybe they were sick or dizzy from a long drive. "Should we check on them?" I said. Jorge hesitated. "I'm not leaving my post until I figure out what's going on with that broadcast. But if you want to drive up there in the cart to see if they need help, you can." In that moment, a chill washed over me. Something about the entire situation gave me pause. I didn't want to go up to the gate alone, but ignoring it felt wrong too. Before I could decide, another camera feed caught my eye. It showed the parking lot from a different angle, and a second figure stumbled into view, heading toward the main building. "Did a tour bus drop off a group I don't know about?" I asked, feeling my stomach tighten. "Not that I'm aware of," said Jorge, leaning closer to the monitors. I leaned forward as well, my heart pounding. The second figure in the parking lot had a similar unsteady walk, as though exhausted or ill. "Tell you what," Jorge said. "Amelia's probably called Miss Gardner by now. If something major is going on, we'll know soon. Let's just keep an eye on the cameras." In hindsight, maybe I should have gone out there, or maybe it was a blessing I didn't. I stayed. We both stared at the screens, anxious and silent. About 20 minutes later, Amelia walked in, a worried look on her face. "I can't reach Miss Gardner," she said. "And our phones have stopped working entirely. I can't call out, and I can't get any internet on my phone. Everything is down." Jorge tapped at a console in the security room. "The resort's landlines might be functional if the cell towers are out, but it looks like the external phone line is dead too." I remembered that Miss Gardner once mentioned the phone lines occasionally cut out during heavy storms, but there wasn't a cloud in the sky. Still, anything was possible. Maybe a local utility issue, or maybe something more. Then Amelia said, "One of the guests came to the desk looking for help. He claimed he saw someone wandering the back parking lot, acting strange. He seemed pretty shaken up." We told her what we'd seen on the cameras. She turned pale. "That's more than just a random person. Something is not right here." I turned to Jorge. "We need more details on that emergency broadcast. Could you try scanning for local radio stations or something on the shortwave? It's worth a try." Jorge began fiddling with dials on a small radio unit in the security room. We heard static, then a muffled voice, then more static. Finally, we locked onto a faint signal. "All local residents, remain in your homes. Do not approach any individuals who appear disoriented or unresponsive. Local authorities. Medical emergency." The signal was so weak we could only catch a few words, yet it was enough to confirm that something serious was happening. Given the tension, we decided to gather everyone, guests and staff, in the dining hall, which was near the lobby. Amelia placed hastily written notes on a few doors, asking people to meet us there in 15 minutes for an important announcement. Jorge went room by room, politely knocking to ensure everyone got the message. By 10 p.m., 6 of us stood around one of the large wooden tables under dimmed chandeliers. There was me, Jorge, Amelia, Lucy, the part-time cook, a man named Brian, who was traveling for business, and the mother with 2 teens, Ashley and Jake. The man with the bandaged arm never showed up. Maybe he hadn't seen the note. Amelia explained what we were aware of. The phones were down, the emergency signal was being repeated on all channels, and we saw several people wandering around the grounds in an anxious state. I still can't believe our government called it a zombie outbreak, although I'm not sure about that. Even so, we encouraged everyone to remain calm and stay indoors. Lucy offered to heat up some soup in case anyone was hungry, as it looked like we might be here for a long time. "What do you think is going on?" asked Ashley, one of the teens. She looked more curious than scared, but her mother Grace wrapped a protective arm around her. "I'm sure it's just some public health concern," I said, trying to sound reassuring. "We'll stay put and keep each other informed until morning. The resort's fences are secure, and we can lock all entrances." Brian, the businessman, frowned. "I need to leave first thing. I have an important client meeting in the city tomorrow. This is all very strange, but let's not blow it out of proportion." Jorge gave him a stern look. "We're not stopping you from leaving, but we suggest you wait until daylight. Those fences might keep odd folks out, but if they're determined, they might find a way in. At least if it's daylight, you can see what's going on." Brian reluctantly nodded. Then the lights flickered. It was just for an instant, but all conversation fell silent. Everyone turned to look at the chandeliers, worried that the power might fail at any moment. "All right," I said. "We'll set up a station here with flashlights. Let's remain calm, keep each other company, and we'll figure this out together." We decided on a system. Jorge and I would periodically monitor the CCTV feeds in the security room, while Amelia and Lucy stayed with the guests in the dining hall to keep them informed. Every time we checked the cameras, the situation grew more unsettling. By 11 p.m., the gate camera showed not just one figure, but two. They both exhibited the same listless movement, occasionally jerking their arms or tilting their heads. They didn't enter the code or buzz in. They just stood, a few feet from the closed gate. More people lingered by the main parking lot, aimlessly pacing back and forth. "Where are they all coming from?" I asked, my throat dry. "And why aren't they trying to get in?" Jorge shook his head. "They might be disoriented. Could be some mass confusion in town." We watched in silence for a couple of minutes. Then one figure stumbled forward and pressed up against the gate with surprising force. The chain link rattled but held. The person didn't relent. They just kept pushing. The other figure joined, pressing as well. I felt goosebumps on my arms. "We should check the locks on all external entrances," Jorge muttered. "I'll do it," I replied, trying to summon some courage. "Can you keep watching the cameras?" He nodded. Armed with a flashlight, I started with the side doors. The ones leading to a staff parking lot, and the ones near the conference rooms. Each door had an electronic lock. I tugged them to ensure they were secured. I made sure the mechanical latches were engaged. So far, so good. Then I headed to the service entrance, where deliveries usually arrived. It was a heavy metal door. I pushed the handle to confirm it was locked, but to my surprise, it swung open. It wasn't locked at all. I felt a wave of alarm. How long had this door been unsecured? I quickly stepped outside to assess the surroundings. The resort's dumpster was about 20 yards from the door, and beyond that, a ring of trees circled the property. The night air was cold, and the stillness was unnerving. I scanned the area with my flashlight, half expecting to see someone standing by the dumpster, but there was only emptiness. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I hurried back inside and made sure the deadbolt was in place. Before leaving the hallway, I heard something outside, a faint rustling. My pulse quickened, but I forced myself to return to the dining hall and report that the external doors were now locked. When I returned, Lucy pointed out that the man with the bandaged arm, Mark, still hadn't shown up. Grace, the mother, looked anxious. "I saw him limping earlier," she said. "He looked like he was in pain." Amelia frowned. "He was supposed to be in room 205. Maybe we should check on him," I volunteered. "I'll go up to the second floor and knock. Maybe he fell asleep or didn't see the note." Lucy offered to join me, so we each grabbed a flashlight and headed upstairs. The second floor hallway was dimly lit. Some of the overhead lights had been turned off to save energy during the off-season, and only every other fixture glowed faintly. We passed by empty rooms, listening for any sound of movement. A distant drip from a pipe echoed through the corridor. We found room 205. I knocked gently. "Mark, it's the maintenance worker. Are you all right? We're gathering everyone downstairs. The phone lines are out." No answer. Lucy tried as well, but the silence continued. I decided to try the door handle. It was locked, but I had a master key. "Mark?" I called again. "We're coming in, just to make sure you're okay." I slid the keycard through the slot. The door beeped, unlocking with a loud click. We entered. The room was dark. I shone the flashlight around, revealing a perfectly made bed, a small table with a half-empty glass of water, and the faint outline of a single suitcase. No sign of Mark. The sliding doors to the balcony were open, letting in a cold gust of wind that fluttered the curtains. Lucy and I exchanged worried glances. We walked over to the balcony. The glass door was indeed open, but there was no one on the small outdoor space, just a view of the moonlit lake in the distance and the thick canopy of trees. I saw a few tiny lights flickering near the far edge of the property, probably the lamps along the footpath. "Where did he go?" Lucy asked, checking the bathroom. It was empty. "Could he have wandered outside?" She bit her lip. "He was limping. Maybe he was looking for some help. Should we go after him?" I hesitated. "It's dangerous out there. Plus, we have no clue if he went into the woods or just went downstairs some other way." Just then, Lucy noticed something on the corner of the bedside table, a small, crumpled note. She picked it up and read it aloud. "I heard the broadcast. If you're reading this, lock everything. Don't wait for me." We stared at each other, confused and a little unsettled. "He must have known something," Lucy whispered. "Why else would he warn us to lock everything?" I tucked the note into my pocket. Without any further clues, we left the room and made our way back downstairs. If Mark had gone outside, he was on his own now, and I silently hoped he was still okay. We reconvened in the dining hall, updating everyone on the missing guest and the note he left behind. The group's mood sank further. Brian tapped his fingers nervously on the table, while Ashley and Jake huddled next to their mother, eyes wide. "How many people have you seen outside?" Grace asked, directing the question at Jorge. "At least half a dozen on the cameras. Could be more lurking in the blind spots. Are they trying to break in?" This was from Jake, the teenage boy. Jorge exchanged a look with me, then answered carefully. "They're definitely pressing against the gates. I can't say for sure if they're trying to break in, but it doesn't look normal." We talked about potential worst-case scenarios. If these people got inside, if they were more aggressive than we realized, or if the phone lines never came back. Amelia suggested we prepare for the possibility that we might be here several days. After all, we had a substantial pantry and backup generators. "Let's fill up water containers," Lucy said, trying to be practical. "In case the resort's water supply goes out, we'll need enough for everyone." Everyone agreed. So we decided to gather supplies from the kitchen and bring them to a more central storage area near the dining hall. The guests helped, though tensions were high. Even Brian, who was initially dismissive, now looked worried. At around midnight, while sorting through canned goods in the kitchen pantry, I heard a loud clang from somewhere near the lobby. My instincts kicked in, and I rushed to see what had happened. Jorge was already on his way, walkie-talkie in hand, scanning the corridors with his flashlight. "You heard that too?" he asked. "Yeah. Sounded like metal hitting tile." We moved carefully, listening for any more noises. Then it came again, a scraping sound that sent chills down my spine. It seemed to emanate from the main entrance area, where the large glass doors were located. We crept closer, flashlights shaking slightly. The glass doors were locked, but we saw that a small stone planter once used for decor was now knocked over. Potting soil was scattered across the floor. One of the doors had cracks along the edges of the glass, as if someone or something had hit it with considerable force. Jorge's voice was hushed. "Look!" He pointed to the exterior. Our eyes followed his finger, and that's when I saw movement in the darkness. A silhouette near the doorway, its hand pressed against the glass. The figure moved with slow, jerky motions, but when the light caught its eyes, they reflected with an unsettling emptiness. I couldn't breathe for a moment. Then the figure let out a muffled, low groan. It startled both of us. I think we need to get back," I managed to say. "Warn the others." Jorge nodded, unable to tear his eyes away from the figure. "They're definitely trying to get in now." Within minutes, we were barricading the lobby's main doors with furniture, heavy tables, chairs, anything we could move. The large glass pane worried me. A few more impacts and it could shatter. Jorge talked about possibly reinforcing it with plywood from the storage shed out back, but that meant going outside. None of us felt safe doing that, not yet. Meanwhile, Lucy and Amelia tried to keep the guests calm. Brian paced anxiously, glancing at his watch. The teens stayed close to their mother. I could see the fear in Grace's eyes, though she tried to appear strong for her kids. "I can't believe this is happening," Grace murmured to Amelia. "Me neither," Amelia admitted, handing her a glass of water. "But we'll stick together, okay?" Jorge rejoined us after double-checking the security feeds. They're congregating around the building. Some are near the pool area, others by the back loading dock. Not huge numbers, but enough to worry about. I recalled that the side doors were locked, but a determined group could still force their way in eventually. "We might need to move deeper into the building," I said. "The dining hall has 2 entrances, but we can secure those. The interior rooms have thicker walls." Brian interjected. "Wait, you want us to just lock ourselves in a room and wait this out? For how long?" He had a point. None of us knew how long we'd be stuck. But what were our alternatives? Wandering outside in the middle of the night with these unknown individuals lurking? No, that was too risky. Jorge proposed a compromise. "Let's fortify the second floor. There are fewer entry points upstairs. We can monitor the situation from windows on the second floor and use the main staircase as our last line of defense." In the end, we agreed that might be safest. We began gathering blankets, food, and whatever supplies we could carry. The plan was to spend the night in the second-floor lounge, which had a large sofa, a few comfy chairs, and a limited but functional kitchenette. Carrying flashlights and supplies, we led our small group up the main staircase. Every step echoed in the otherwise silent resort. The kids clung to each other, and Grace's eyes darted around anxiously. Brian carried a box of canned goods. Amelia lugged a small cooler filled with water bottles. Lucy held on to some utensils and packaged snacks. I kept glancing back to ensure no one lagged behind. I also listened intently, worried about hearing a window break or a door forced open. We made it to the second-floor lounge without incident, though the tension was palpable. We switched on the lounge's lights, which flickered but held steady. There were no windows directly overlooking the outside area, only windows that peered down into the indoor courtyard. That courtyard offered a partial view of the lobby. If something forced its way in, we might be able to see movement from up here. As we settled in, Lucy distributed some granola bars while Amelia tried to keep everyone's spirits up. I checked the small TV in the lounge, hoping to catch another emergency alert. Nothing. All channels were either static or repeating the same warning we'd seen before. For the next hour or so, we sat together, occasionally venturing into a hushed conversation about what might be going on in the outside world. Some thought it was a public health crisis. Others suspected a more widespread event. The teens wondered if the authorities would come to rescue us. Brian, who had been pacing a lot, finally slumped in one of the armchairs, all businesslike composure gone. "I used to think I was prepared for anything," he muttered. "Long drives, flight cancellations, storms. But this, I don't know how to handle this." Grace patted his arm sympathetically. She confessed that she'd originally brought her kids here for a mini getaway, hoping to reconnect after a stressful year. The sadness in her voice cut through me. No one planned for a crisis like this. Lucy looked at me and said softly, "We'll get through this. We just need to hold out until morning." I tried to smile, but it felt hollow. A part of me thought Mark, the guest with the bandaged arm, had the right idea leaving that note. He must have seen something that told him to get out quickly. Still, we stuck to the plan. We split into pairs for a makeshift watch rotation. Jorge and I took the first shift, each of us stationed near different parts of the second floor to listen for any suspicious sounds. Lucy tried to sleep on the sofa, while Grace and her kids settled on some blankets, though I doubt anyone truly slept. A little after 2 a.m., the lights flickered again, and then a dull hum echoed through the corridors. The backup generator had kicked in. The main power was finally gone. That meant we had limited electricity. Jorge used his flashlight to guide me over to the lounge's window overlooking the courtyard. Below, we could see the edge of the lobby's barricades. Something was definitely moving down there. Large silhouettes, but we couldn't discern how many. My heart thumped in my chest as we peered downward. Then came a faint tapping on a window nearby. At first I thought it might be a tree branch brushing against the glass. But it repeated, in a rhythm too regular to be random. Tap, tap, tap. I grabbed the flashlight and held it steady, stepping carefully down the hall leading to the row of guest rooms. There was a window at the end of this hall that faced the back of the property. I approached cautiously, scanning the glass. And there it was, a figure pressed against the outside, face obscured by darkness. The tapping was their fingers brushing the window, almost as if politely asking to come in. I stood there, frozen, as the figure slowly turned their head. I could just make out an unfocused gaze, like they weren't fully aware of what they were doing. My stomach lurched. The figure's hand rose again, tapping the glass ever so gently. I raised the flashlight, shining it directly at the window. The figure jerked back, as if startled, and then disappeared from view. My heart hammered as I realized the second floor wasn't necessarily safe if these individuals managed to climb balconies or find a way up onto ledges. I retreated to the lounge, trying to keep my composure. Jorge saw my expression and asked, "You good?" Someone was right outside that second floor window. I whispered, forcing each word out. They tapped on the glass and then vanished. He muttered something under his breath that sounded like disbelief mixed with fear. "We can't let them find a way in." Time crawled. By 4 a.m., the lounge was thick with tension. None of us had slept. Every creak in the building made us jump. The dull glow of emergency lights provided just enough illumination to cast moving shadows in the hall. We huddled together, occasionally nibbling on snacks, waiting for the sun to rise. A single question dominated my thoughts. What happens when morning comes? Will these people, or as we say zombies, still be outside? Will help arrive? Or will we be forced to attempt an escape on our own? Brian broke the silence. "I think we should try to find a working vehicle at first light. If I have to hotwire one, I'll do it." Jorge frowned. "What if the roads are blocked, or more of these individuals are out there?" "I can't stay here forever. None of us can." Amelia sighed, hugging her knees to her chest. Lucy closed her eyes, perhaps trying to pray or gather her thoughts. Grace looked towards her 2 teens, who were dozing fitfully. I volunteered to check the cameras one last time. The security room was downstairs, near potential danger, but I felt compelled to see if anything had changed. Maybe some had left. Maybe help had arrived at the gate. Jorge insisted on coming with me. Together, we slowly descended the main staircase. Our flashlights cut through the dim corridor. The barricade at the lobby entrance was still intact, though one of the tables was pushed slightly. I didn't even want to know what force had done that. We slipped into the security room. The monitors flickered, running on generator power. My stomach dropped as soon as I saw the feed. The resort grounds were swarming with a scattered crowd of these strange people. Many were standing motionless, facing the building. Others paced back and forth. The gate camera showed a similar gathering at the entrance, with no sign of authorities or rescue. One feed caught my eye, near the rear loading dock. The metal door I had bolted shut was now open, swinging outward in the wind. A chill ran down my spine. Had I not secured it properly, or had something forced it open? Whatever the case, it meant an unguarded entry point into the resort. Jorge saw it too. "We need to close that door, if they find that opening." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. We hurried toward the back corridors, hearts pounding. At the turn leading to the loading dock, we paused to listen. No sounds of shuffling footsteps, yet. I flicked on the flashlight and aimed it down the hallway. The door stood ajar at the far end, letting in a breeze. Creeping closer, we kept scanning for any sign of movement. About halfway I saw them, a group of 3, standing right outside the open doorway. They had that same vacant sway. My flashlight beam made them flinch, but they didn't retreat. Instead, one stepped forward, arms raised in a slow, disjointed motion. I glanced at Jorge, and we both backed away, careful not to make noise. There was no way to lock that door from the inside without confronting them. If we tried to rush forward, we'd be face to face with these individuals. Were they aggressive? Would they chase us? The horrifying thought was that we might already be surrounded. We retreated to the security room, hearts thundering. The door to the loading dock would remain open. The only hope was that they wouldn't immediately realize they could walk in. But there was no guarantee. We raced back to the second-floor lounge. By then, everyone was awake, some from the sound of our hurried footsteps, others from the stress of the night. I told them what we saw. Brian looked furious, or maybe terrified, hard to tell. "So they can come in whenever they want now." Grace wrapped an arm around her kids protectively. Amelia's face was pale. Lucy swallowed hard, taking a moment before speaking. "We need to decide what to do," she said. "Stay and barricade ourselves further, or try to leave." "Leaving might mean we walk straight into trouble," I pointed out. "But staying means we're cornered if they come inside." Jorge paced for a second, then said quietly, "We have to pick one and stick to it. Dawn is a couple of hours away. Maybe the sunlight will give us a better chance to find a safe path out of here." The debate raged. Some wanted to attempt an immediate escape, others preferred to wait. In the end, the majority agreed to stay put until morning. We reasoned that if these individuals were still around by daylight, at least we'd be able to see them clearly and possibly sneak past them to a vehicle. The unknown was daunting, but so was the idea of braving the dark with no clue what was out there. Around 6 a.m., the faintest light crept into the sky. The lounge's windows revealed the first hints of a grey morning. We cautiously ventured to the second-floor windows that overlooked the parking lot. What we saw did not fill us with optimism. A larger group stood among the cars, many of them motionless, some turning their heads in uncoordinated patterns. The gate area was similarly crowded. "How are we supposed to get past that?" Lucy whispered. Brian pulled aside a curtain to check another angle. "It's too many." We realized with sinking hearts that leaving the resort might be impossible without a diversion or a miracle. Even though we had the advantage of daylight, we were massively outnumbered. That brings me to where I am now, scribbling these notes in a small utility room off the second-floor lounge. The others are trying to form a plan, maybe create a distraction near the front gate, while a smaller group slips out the back, or maybe wait longer to see if help arrives. Personally, I'm not sure we can rely on any rescue at this point. Outside I can still see them, clustered figures standing near the fences and the broken loading dock door. Occasionally one will wander a few steps in a strange pattern, then pause, as if listening to something we can't hear. Their silence is the most haunting part. They don't shout or speak or call out for help. They just wait. I'm writing this down in hopes that someone someday might find it and understand what happened here. We don't know if this is just local or if it's widespread. We don't even know if we have a chance out there. But waiting inside without a concrete plan feels like a slow countdown to a dreadful discovery. In the next room, Amelia is trying to comfort Grace's teens. Lucy is talking quietly with Brian about possible routes away from the lake. Jorge is watching the hallway entrance, his flashlight flickering. We can hear faint scraping sounds now and then, like someone brushing against walls or furniture on the floors below. The generator is running low on fuel. If it cuts out completely, we lose the last of our lights, and the building will be even more dismal. The mechanical hum is all that stands between us and total silence. A few minutes ago, we heard a door creak somewhere downstairs. We all froze, exchanging glances, but no one dared to investigate. If someone has made it in, they're likely wandering the corridors. Or maybe it's just the wind. The not knowing is the hardest part. We're at a crossroads. We can attempt to slip out through a side entrance, though the fences might funnel us right into the crowd outside. Or we can cling to the desperate hope that a rescue team arrives, or that these strange individuals eventually move on. Neither option feels safe. For now, we've decided to remain on this floor, keep watch, and see what happens. The daylight might grant us one small advantage, and if any rescue does come, they'll likely approach the main lobby. We'll try to signal them from an upper window if we're still here. I don't know how this will end. I don't know if we'll be forced to make a break for it, or if salvation will arrive just in time. All I do know is that if you're reading this, I hope you've never felt the wrenching chill of isolation that grips a place meant for warmth and comfort. Maybe we'll find a way out. Maybe the doors will hold. But I can't promise a sunrise free of fear. I can only say that we're doing our best to stay together, to stay calm, and to keep hope alive. If we manage to escape, I'll write down everything we learned. If we don't, well, let this stand as a record of how quickly life can shift from routine to something unthinkable. We're still here for now. Thank you for listening. If this story sent shivers down your spine, don't forget to like and subscribe for more unsettling creepypastas. Your support keeps this channel alive. Until next time, stay vigilant and remember, curiosity can be quite the companion and sometimes a curse.